Well, good evening, everybody. It's 5:15 here. According to my phone. And this is, I'll open the meeting, call the order of Wednesday, November 8th, 2023 at 5:15. So since there's only four of us, we need to, I think, do the roll call. What's Cobbs?
Here.
Kate Ryan?
Here.
Joe and Rick?
Here.
And Bill Marachek here. So we do have four individuals and we therefore have a quorum. First item on the list is the approval of the minutes of October 11th, 2023. Any comments, points, questions?
On item number 2, the interim HR director's report, it just seems like there's a missing sentence right there. I wasn't sure what that. I don't remember, sorry.
I will have to look back.
Yeah.
I apologize.
No worries.
Maybe I didn't send the right version. I'm so sorry. All right, so I have to finish number 2, interim human resource director's report with the first part. Yeah. Okay, can I complete?
So we still can go ahead and approve that with the necessary insertion. Any other comments, questions?
Not for me.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes from October 11th, 2023 as amended.
All right. And
Second.
so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, Joe and Kate. So we have
You got it.
We have all four. All right, we're gonna move on to the interim human resource director's report and Kimberly Crowe.
Excellent, thank you so much, Chair. I have before you tonight just a couple of reports. Remember, we decided earlier in the year that we would produce quarterly reports for our hires and our terminations, and so making good on that because our payroll lags by a month. Because our personnel board meetings are so early in the month. I'm able to give you here in November statistics from January through September. And so you'll see on the first of the reports that we have hired regular status employees, 33 regular status employees for the first 9 months of this year. And we have exited 43. A majority of those being resignations, but 11 of those being retirements.
I'm sorry, that was 43?
Yeah, 33 and 43. And they're broken out by department, of course, so you can see. Are there any questions on the reports?
Just a more broader question about the exited 43. I know you've been doing some interviews and that sort of thing with folks. Is there any trends?
You know, we're very early in the process. I believe 11 people have exited in the time I've been doing exit interviews, and I believe I had completed 7 of those prior to their leaving. And I have a list of several that I'm reaching out to prior to my leaving in the role. And so I don't have anything that's a trend for those 7 at this point.
One question I have kind of for the town to think about on the resignations in particular. It might be helpful for us to see the total headcount for each of these departments, because that would indicate where there may be strengths in retaining people or where there may be opportunities. If you just look at this the way it is, human services has 8 of the 32 resignations, which is the most on the page, but I don't know, if they have most people that work for the town as an example, or if they have the fewest number of people.
Okay.
So maybe whoever does this the next time, if we could train them to just add the headcount next to this, it would help us see.
Absolutely. We can do that.
Help you guys see that and kind of assess it, and that may, in addition to whatever the exit interviews show, will also show you what some of the trends in turnover are.
I'm curious in terms of, my point's gonna be for the future, but does anyone have any thoughts about when we get to the point of being able to have 12 months or a year behind us, and we have the data for that? Any thoughts about being then showing last year's numbers so that you have a comparative between current and past? I sort of like that.
I'm used to seeing that.
Okay.
It's a very good one.
And I think you showed us like 5 years, there was one set of data that did have annual or
Yeah.
multi-year comparisons, right? Yeah, it was helpful.
I
Right,
think,
we did an annual look. Kind of this is how many employees you have, this is how they're broken out, kind of a scorecard, if you will. And that turnover piece did show, I believe, 5 years worth of turnover.
so this particular report is a public record.
Yeah.
And is available on our, where is this?
Everything that's in the package will eventually be posted on the
Okay.
personnel board website.
Okay,
Dave.
But also on the HR side, there's some data that's available on a regular basis too, or is it only through coming to the personnel board site that individuals would see that data?
At this point, I don't believe we posted anything like this data out on the HR website. It's certainly possible, but it has thus far been part of the packet, the agenda packet for the board.
okay. Now, in terms of vacancies, um, and what current, past, and so forth, what are we gonna be able to share among the personnel board and citizens?
What would you like to see?
Well, I mean, in some ways, if we add some additional columns to the, what you're doing with terminations, and those columns refer to vacancies or, you know, what the balance of vacancies happen to be. That would be one way to approach it, so you don't necessarily have to create a totally new tool. You could use and expand the existing tool. The other, and this is more, the other aspect of this is, I've always found it interesting to know the source of where the new talent comes from. Because that can guide the present management in the HR organization, the town management. But I think it also can be instructive for the personnel board to sort of get a sense as to what are the recruiting successes, or where are we finding our new employees? And if, again, keeping track on a comparative basis year to year, that data, I think, it's data, it's information. It may be not always as useful or helpful, but it does give us a lot more than what we've been able to do in the past. And Kimberly, thank you for tying this all together. It's really quite an accomplishment.
Yeah, well, it's certainly my pleasure. Part of the work that we've been doing over the last 2 months, your HR team was challenged by the town manager to work with finance to come up with a position control mechanism. It just seems that in the past, it's been very challenging because our systems are somewhat limiting. It's been challenging to know where our vacancies are at any given time. We know anecdotally because we know there are empty chairs, right? But we don't have a position control. I don't know how you do it in Wayland. If you have a position control module where you can just look, you can look and see,
I wish we did, we don't.
Yeah. Over time, I think Munis, when we implement various modules of Munis, we'll have a position control module that's designed for that. But right now, we've been doing quite a bit of work with finance in the budget process to make sure that we have an accounting for every filled position as well as every vacant position that's in the budget. And in addition to that, staff built an interactive model because we're gonna be bargaining in the new year. I believe every contract except for one is coming up for renewal. And so being able to cost out various proposals from each of the unions is gonna be very, very critical. You know, because the basis of all bargaining is a building of trust, you know, where we can demonstrate that what you're asking for costs this much. And we can either say yes to that, or we may not have the ability to say yes to them. And so that has taken a great deal of time and effort over the last few months, and was just turned over in the last 10 days or so for the budgeting process. So we're very excited by that. And hopefully that scratches an itch for your vacancies here.
Mhm.
That gives us a true accounting that we can go to give you what you're looking for.
There's always gonna be, I think, some outliers here in terms of, there is, as I understand, or was a opening for an assistant HR director when I can't remember the name, she left to go to Waltham. Well, but that position isn't gonna get filled, or wasn't, because obviously you have arrived and we're in the process of looking and recruiting for a new HR director, and therefore that person should have a lot to say in terms of who he or she's gonna be working with. So there's gonna be a period of time where that particular job is, and I don't know, I mean, obviously you can asterisk some of these things, and maybe I'm making more of this than necessary, but depending upon how much detail you're able to provide, I'm always a big believer in more better, less.
Well, I think that fits into earlier discussions in two ways. One is that as we look at this team here becoming more strategic,
Mhm.
then that's an expertise that we could help,
Mhm.
right? So if we see the vacancies, we see what type of marketing for those positions works, maybe we can give some nuanced advice there. So that's part one. The other part is that with the more data and understanding where those vacancies are, plus understanding where we're looking for people, we can also look at our DEIB strategy, right? Diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and see how is that being balanced in where we're securing contracts for advertising, et cetera.
Good point. Any other comments before we move forward? No. Any other items you want to?
We simply have before you tonight some additional job descriptions from the recent study. Before you tonight, new in front of you, the Director of Library Services. I'm going to call your attention to the second one in your packet, Facilities Manager. You have previously approved a Facilities Manager job description. And when we went to post this job, we noticed two errors in the under Education and Experience with the naming that had been used for several certifications, both a green certification name and an OSHA certification name that were inappropriately named. And so you're going to see that we have made adjustments only in that section under Education and Experience to correct that. And we have also, there were several of these items that were required certifications, and the list was pretty lengthy. And the idea that any candidate would have all of those certifications to be pool and spa certified, playground and safety certified, to have a construction supervisor's license, you're not going to find a person that has all of those things. And so we have made, some of those are required within a certain period of time, and some of them are preferred. And any candidate with those, of course, will have extra consideration. We rescored this, and I worked with Joellen Cardamentary at GovHR to make sure that the position salary grade remained the same, and it does. So that's the only one I think that's before you tonight that you've seen before. The next one, Special Projects Manager and Systems Manager. This is a critical need to assist us with our Munis implementation that kicked off on October 1st. We have more modules in the works, that'll be coming in over the next couple of years, and this is a critical need, for that, series of, important, tasks. Then the Assistant Director of Library Services, the Senior Treatment Systems Operator and Treatment Systems Operator, one of the Recreation Supervisors, and the Office Administrator for the Police Chief, the Geriatric Health Nurse, and the Senior Administrative Specialist for Human Resources is before you tonight as well. Now I'll take any questions or comments regarding the packet and job description.
So this is, I guess, sort of an academic question, but for, you probably have to advertise in very different places for all of these positions. And we in particular know how important getting a wonderful HR director to follow in your footsteps is going to be. How, I guess, GovHR is obviously going to help, is helping there. Is there any other needs for support to advertise in an appropriate or a broader way, or?
Are you asking me about the HR director in particular, or about these jobs that are before you?
Yes and yes. So,
Okay.
so I know there must be different ways that you have to. We in
Absolutely.
particular as personnel board are interested in who could ever take your shoes. But then where do you advertise for that kind of thing? And then for other positions, you know, especially with the, and it's how, I don't know that the munis or is it MUDIS or
MUN.
NIS? Okay. So that system and that expertise, I wouldn't even know where to begin to look for someone with those skills. So Kate's laughing, so I'm sure you know. Right.
You know, for these more senior level positions, mid-manager and senior executive level positions, where we've had the greatest success has been through, I'm gonna get the acronym wrong, but the Massachusetts
MMA.
Municipal Association, yes, MMA. We've had great success there. To give you an example, I'm not gonna remember the exact number of people that applied for CFO, but it was a big number. And we had a wonderful slate of candidates. And then just within the last several weeks, Anthony Ansaldi has started with us as the CFO. Right now, I'm working on the recreation director. We posted that in a number of the rec specific, is it Rec and Parks Association for Massachusetts, the MMA. We had 51 applicants and it's still open. We're still receiving applications. I started those interviews this week and I've done 8 so far this week. And these are uber qualified candidates. So, you know, if you're looking at like the water treatment personnel, there's a APWA, the American Public Works Association. There are water associations and wastewater associations. There's anything that has a certification. There's an agency that certifies them that typically allows you to post on their website. And that's where people who fish in that pond, that's where they're going to go fishing, you know, for open position. The Munis situation is, you know, kind of that's an ERP system. So that means your accounting happens and accounts payable and your accounting function happens within Munis. Eventually there will be a procurement function, I believe, for Munis that will link to that. And then your HRIS system can be a Munis module. And when you have all three linked together in a true enterprise resource planning solution, you don't have to worry about a vacancy report. It's all there, you know.
Nice.
And so it's a booger to build, but once you have it built, it's absolutely the way to go. And so each of these positions, we've got a number of places that will go to seek them Additionally, we have invested in a couple of diversity recruitment areas. I think I've reported on that in a prior meeting. But we're using Pink Jobs, we're using diversity.com, and there are several others, forgive me for not remembering off the top of my head. That we're just, we've just begun in the last few months to utilize. And frankly, have not seen a lot of traffic yet, but we're starting to utilize those websites.
Kimberly, what is the data in respect to employee referrals?
I don't know the answer to that. I'd be happy to investigate it and answer that.
Well, my experience has always been that the candidate that comes from through employee referrals is a really valuable candidate because of the fact that the people don't, they're not going to recommend somebody that they don't personally themselves. So anyway, I've always been a strong supporter of employee referrals.
At my last assignment, we had just we did some analysis on employee referrals and their stick-to-it rate. And I'm not going to remember, but it was in the, I don't have a brochure with me from my last assignment, but it's part of our metrics package. Something like, the difference was something like 60% stay if they're not an employee referral, and 88% stay if they are. And you start costing that out, what it takes to churn, to re-recruit, to retrain. And we had upped our employee referral award from a day off to $500 after the first 30 days and another $500 after 6 months, I believe is what we did. Wow. And when you start putting your money where your mouth is, if people take notice.
Right.
Yeah.
Any other comments before we vote on these classifications?
My only question on these roles, are they for the most part replacement reps or are any added positions?
There is one ad for sure, and let me take a look at them. The Munis piece, the special projects manager and systems manager, was newly added to the salary table in advance of the Munis implementation. So that is brand new.
Can I ask about that one? I was curious, is that a full-time permanent position? So once everything's up and implemented, you're gonna retain that person to sort of manage and keep this, package up to date and move forward. I'm not a software person, clearly. So I was just curious.
No, it'll be a critical member of the finance department. Okay. And the expectation is there are actually some duties written in there that they help with procurement and budget, strike procurement, creation of the budget.
Okay.
Yeah, which is another, this is the time of year where it's critically important.
Yes.
All right, any others we should move forward with vote?
How many are there again? I didn't count them, sorry. I should get that right.
I think there's at least 8, there may be more.
I don't know if I need another. So I move to approve all of the proposed job descriptions as listed in the packet for today's meeting.
All right, a second.
A second, I believe there are 10 if I counted.
10, okay,
10.
10.
Thank you.
There are 10.
So all in favor, Liz Collins,
Aye.
Abraham,
Yes.
and Joe Emmerich?
Yes.
Bill, yes. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Kimberly.
That concludes my report.
We're going to move on to the next item, which is the discussion of the personnel bylaw. And I want to again publicly thank Kate for really spending a tremendous amount of time helping to pull an initial draft together for review and really the great work on the part of the personnel board team to, closely look at the language and, ask, I think, some really good questions. Liz and Joe, thank you for that. So where are we at, do you think? Who wants to start the conversation here?
I wasn't here last week, but I did review some of the, I guess, proposed changes. I don't know if we wanna, I assume that they were changes in the draft, in the version that was
Right.
put in the packet today. If we wanna just, it might be helpful for me, since I wasn't here, just to sort of walk through, your thought process and.
Sounds good to me. I did try to keep everything highlighted that was
Yeah.
changed, so that it would be easier for us to walk through it. I'm going to be typing, so I'm gonna go later. And Mark is with us this evening, and you also had read it, I think, and had some comments, so that would be helpful at some point to get your comments as well.
Why don't we start, Joe, can you lead us through the points that are highlighted there?
The changes.
Yes.
So I'm on the first page here. And I see there's a reference to a clerk is to be assigned on a rotating basis for each meeting to take responsibility for the minutes of the meeting. So we talked about that in our last meeting.
And I think the change was, if I remember correctly, we had in the past, we'd had help from HR to do that, but in fact, it wasn't possible for them to keep up with the minutes and so forth. So like many other committees in town, we've turned internally to do that. So I don't know, Kate, if that I took something out there, and that's why I highlighted from your first.
No, it makes sense. I don't think I added the clerk.
Okay, okay.
That makes sense.
And we had discussion, there's a comment here about a word, whether. But the discussion here was around whether or not an employee of the town should or could serve on the personnel board. And if yes, what would that purpose be? Or is there a conflict of interest? We kind of talked about those things a little bit. And I don't know if we had any land on any.
Was there consensus
Decision.
on, no,
I honestly don't recall we had a consensus, and I remember bringing it up because all the materials that you put forward, there were a couple of towns
Yeah.
that had that.
Yeah, no, Chelmsford does.
Yeah, and do you have any experience of what that does for Chelmsford?
No, I mean, I can reach out to their HR director. Actually, our town manager used to work in Chelmsford, so he was the one who pointed me in that direction. I'm not sure. Maybe I can see it giving a voice to, the town employee or town employees, and I'm not sure. I mean, we're talking about our non-union population, so I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to it. It would just be interesting to see how that would work, and whether there'd be interest from employees to be involved.
Yeah. I think asking them would be a good idea.
Yeah.
You haven't taken that step, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bill, do you have a thought on that?
No, I mean, I would be open if that was really the consensus of the personnel board. I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other.
I'm kind of stuck because if you get one person from one department, they're not gonna necessarily know issues in other departments, and so how does that manage?
Yeah, how does that help?
Yeah,
Right. How does that really help the personnel board?
right, and if I can make an analogy, there's on the school committee now in town. There are 2 members of the MECO program that sit. They don't get to have voting rights, but there's one for high school and one for K-8. And quickly after they were put on a board, then Boston MECO also forms a parent-teacher group. So that they had a way to funnel information into what they wanted to see at the school committee, making it much more effective to have those individuals on that committee.
Yeah.
And I don't see, I mean, that's an added time burden for employees to do that kind of work,
Yeah.
right? So that's another hesitancy I have, but we haven't asked them, and that I'm realizing that was a waste. We should have reached out somehow. Any comments as a former employee, Mark, or as a select board member?
I recognize the challenge. I think that if an employee was drawn from sort of the supervisory rank or the department head, they probably have enough enough scope and, you know, a broad enough understanding of the issues in general, and would also be high enough profile that other employees from across departments would probably be comfortable approaching them if they knew of the role. I think it's where I get a little stuck is I'm not exactly sure what's a appropriate mechanism for finding and, you know, they're gonna have an election amongst employees for a rep, and, you know, there's kind of obvious problems with having the town manager or the HR director select the person, so it gets a little tricky to sort of figure out exactly how you get such a person in the first place, but the organization is, you know, sufficiently small that, you know, I think most of the, you know, supervisors have a tendency to be known across the, and that might just be my unique perspective because I was in IT and IT deals with all departments, but so it's tricky. I can see the value of it. I think having an open door policy with respect to employees might accomplish a lot of the same things.
So maybe listening to your comments, one thing that comes to mind is, maybe we table this for now and continue to move with the bylaws as they are now. And another reason to do that is we still have a lot of work to do to confirm our scope, right?
Yeah.
So I think asking them, come on, join us, we're kind of wandering down this road, you know, that's not really helpful for them, but if we're really, you know, clear, it might be better to put that off a year and come back to that discussion.
I think that's a
Yeah,
That's a
I agree
wise
with that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
I
agree with
mean,
that.
one way to handle it would be to not put in the bylaw restriction that the person cannot be an employee. So if
Yeah.
you leave it out altogether, then it opens the door for your, you know, and I mean.
Yeah.
Thinking out loud here, the personnel board is appointed by the select board, so that means that maybe one way to get there is just have the select board appoint an employee. You know,
Yeah.
and assume, and then it would be up to the employee to decide whether they wanted to take on that role.
So then it seems like paragraph 3 we would just remove potentially on page 1 and be silent.
But aren't there potential conflicts of interest there? I mean,
Yes.
especially if you have a resident who's also an employee and then also a board member. So I think maybe that's what that piece of you can't be an employee is kind of touching. Or speaking to, so maybe I don't know, maybe we can't even do this. Well, we can because other towns.
but maybe I mean, so remember our big discussion of what's in the bylaw versus other,
Yeah.
and it's actually the responsibility of the select board then, right? To not appoint somebody who would have those conflicts. So I guess we could put it in the bylaw, but maybe
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be in the bylaw because it should be in the select board area. What do you think, select board
I'm
member?
gonna think about, I wanna think about it a little bit more. and
Yeah.
Agree to give you a more considered opinion later.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm writing that
With
down.
with your timeline that you're working on.
Yeah,
You know, contemplating anything that's.
that major, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's too,
I agree.
it's too much.
Set it aside.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the comments that I sent you, just because you've already covered this. I did have a concern about the notion of spelling out how the clerk is assigned or appointed in the bylaw. Again, you're talking about the bylaw, which is something very permanent.
Yeah.
Most committees refer to, there'll be a chair, co-chair, and a clerk who's responsible for minutes, and it doesn't say anything about how they're assigned, and, you know, because you could decide that some future board could just as easily have somebody who wants to do it for a year or 3 months at a time or whatever. Those are sort of, the rules for doing that are more covered by the general guidelines for running a committee or a board. They don't need to be in the bylaw.
So that's
Like-
all of paragraph 3.
No, this.
Well,
exactly what
It's
clerk
usually the
is,
first sentence does appear in wherever the charter, the members will elect a chair and co-chair, members on an annual basis. We've on occasion had people that wanted to be chair forever, and so it's a good reminder that
Yeah,
the committee needs to decide that. And likewise, the point about the agenda, time and place of meetings will be posted on the town website. That again is open meeting law stuff
Mhm.
and doesn't need to be in here.
oh, it does not need.
No,
No.
I
Ah.
agree, yeah, you
Ah.
have 48 hours, it's open meeting law requires 48 hours.
Yeah,
So then,
I mean, the sentence the paragraph could refer to the personnel board will meet in accordance with the open meeting law. Or regularly in accordance with the open meeting, leave it at that. That means it doesn't need to be changed later.
we're getting very streamlined here.
Right.
It's great. All right, I'm just, personnel board will meet regularly in accordance and share materials in accordance, right?
And the word on the second line of that paragraph, it says two, but I assumed it meant town officials.
That is correct.
Really,
Okay, I'm not capturing everything, so I'll
Yeah. I've
need
taken
your
notes
notes
too, yeah.
later, okay?
Yep.
Are there any other comments or clarifications for page 1? Okay, we'll move to page 2. And are the highlighted parts in gray, are those your highlights, Mark?
No, those I put
Or
in.
is that, those are changes?
Those were for us to look closely at, because in our last really ad hoc meeting, we discussed and changed.
Okay, so then at the top of page 2 in section B here, we talked about an employee handbook. So or something comparable. And who would be responsible for developing that, and what the personnel board's role in that would be.
Yeah.
And then in section C,
Sorry to be sorry, so are we saying that the town manager is the one who's going to, town manager or their designee will develop the handbook and the personnel board will provide advice, support, recommendations? Okay,
Right, we are not the doer.
no, agreed, yeah. So,
So we're in agreement with that first
Mhm.
paragraph then as is?
I'm
Any
just
other
curious, why annual or biannual revisions? Why not any revisions?
yeah,
The town manager or their designee is responsible for revisions to the personnel handbook.
I think the idea was some things got not done in a timely manner, so we put time points in there, is that right?
yeah,
yeah, it's,
So you certainly have policies today, not in a handbook form, but policies today that haven't been
mhm,
Correct.
updated, like when we
Yeah.
did standby last month.
Yeah,
I can't remember the date on it, but it was
Yeah.
a while. And next month I'll have for you, the uniform policy.
mhm.
It's just done, waiting for Carrie's return, but it's done. Yeah. So,
perhaps there's a note about a minimum of. So I don't think it's meant to be like you can only change policies at once a year, every 2 years. But more, at least you're looking at the handbook at that frequency in case laws have changed or there are things that need to be updated that weren't captured throughout the year.
Gotcha.
Is that I think, was that your concern?
That was my
Kimberly,
concern,
You couldn't make a change in between the timeframes,
I think you would be responsible for, changes anytime.
right?
Maybe the word periodic
Periodic review.
is a better term,
And take out,
annual or biannual.
okay,
So I'm wondering if, and maybe this isn't appropriate in the personnel bylaw, but if it would be clearer if we said the town manager or their designee is responsible or shall create and maintain a personnel handbook in consultation, or however we want to phrase it. It's just, it's not, we're saying that the town manager or designee is responsible for reviewing, but then there's nothing there that says that it has to be created. I mean, I know it exists, but. And again, I'm not sure if it's appropriate for a personnel bylaw, but because we're then basically telling the town manager that they have to do something.
well. Yes,
I mean, it already exists, it just.
but it's, some of that stuff is from 1980s, right? I mean. That's,
Yeah.
So.
So
how do
maybe the
we-
revision is probably, if it already exists, then it's probably a moot point, just.
Are we satisfied then with the B? Have we made all the modification edits?
Yeah,
Yeah.
just make sure that you send any ideas. I've captured what I could, but it's kind of been free flowing, so I don't want to mess up. Okay,
So then section C references back to the classification plan and the role of the town manager. So the town manager and their designee shall provide recommendation to the personnel board regarding classification plan, which is defined as listing of all approved position classification titles and a summary job description for each classification for all town employees covered by this bylaw. And then it looks like, I believe, Mark, if I'm reading this right, I think you had a comment and added or someone did, another sentence highlighted in yellow that adds more specificity, make up words, around the role of the personnel board. So it says the personnel board is responsible to review and approve the plan and present the plan to town meeting. So that helps clarify.
And that's true. There's been an article on the county warrant for approval with that for a long time.
sounds like a
Seems
reasonable add
straightforward.
there. Yeah,
So does that, were you saying that we don't need to provide that specific comment or line, or
I think
that we should?
It should be there.
Yeah.
Just for because of my newness, do you actually talk about the classification plan at town meeting every year?
Yeah,
Is that what you're saying?
so
so
the-
all the new job descriptions and everything have to be, they're not, what is it, they're on that side. Assumed approval thing, but they're always there,
Okay,
is that right?
so when the personnel board approves a classification or a job description, that is in lieu of a town meeting approval, so those are all batched. And the article that we go forward at this coming town meeting will include anything that has been done in since the last town meeting's version. And last year, so this year it's a complete replacement because it's new class and comp, but and I had sent this in a note to the chairs that this month is when you would be pulling together that table and creating a draft warrant article, which this board will need to act on in December, so that it can be submitted in time for the warrant deadline, which is something like the 3rd or 4th of January.
yeah, that's good to know. This reminds me, when we did the updates to our website, we actually made a highlight. I think an asterisk is what we used for each of the
Oh, yeah,
changes that we've made, like when we added the electrical inspector and you all approved that. When we changed the title of one of the jobs and you all approved that, we've made note of that. So we're trying to keep that up to date on the website, so when we go to create the warrant, it'll be simple.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's excellent.
And normally when that article is presented at the town meeting hearings. That list that you just referred to of changed is one of the slides. It says, here's all the things we've changed in the last year. And then, you know, and we're going forward, and then whatever the structure movement is usually presented on another page. So it's fairly short and sweet, but it kind of documents it all.
That connected some dots for me, so thank
Sure.
you. I'm still getting used to it all.
I was the presenter last year at town meeting, and I have those from last year, so I can send those to you so you can see what it looked
Good.
like. It's not as comprehensive. I did also want to point out that we were saying, was that Mark who put in that yellow highlight? If you look at the comment on the side, and that EC is me, Elizabeth Cox.
Okay.
And so what that came from was the discussion in that interim meeting. And we thought we needed that sentence, and so I drafted it, so it's, I didn't want anybody confused over who mishandled that sentence. If you want to change it, I'm happy to have you do that, but that's where it came from, okay? Yeah, and then, Mark, just a clarification, you said the early January is the draft article. I was under the impression we had to put in a placeholder at least in December.
Yeah.
We do, okay.
The warrant closes on. The final. I'm just looking at my schedule. Yeah, so ideally earlier is better. The warrant closes on January 3rd at 4 p.m. So, you know, as I mentioned, the town moderator is happy to receive materials well before that. And you're encouraged to do so. So whenever it's ready, probably, you know, depending on what job classification actions you might need to take in December, you know, after you think you've done everything. It's not final in the sense that just put it in, and if there are actions that get taken in January, February, or whatever, right up to town meeting, you can always modify the table for those actions later. So there's not really a lot of value in waiting until the last minute just to catch that last change, because it can always be.
And I remember that last year we were looking at what's the date of printing the warrants.
Yeah.
We were getting up to the end.
You were cutting
Yeah.
it down to the wire.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the due date for draft warrant articles, which is what you were asking me, is
Yeah.
December 15th. So
Okay,
have it drafted by then.
and we'll have two. Right,
Yeah.
we'll have the bylaw change and we'll have the CNC update.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess we've already talked about and tried to make certain that whatever the timing of this flows appropriately for the select board to have ample time to review and critique and
Yeah, so that was also one of the questions in the email. We don't need to. I think that the bylaw is a good one to bring forward. The class and comp is routine. There's a hearing where that will get presented, and that's more than enough discussion from the select board's perspective on that. That's probably the February 26th hearing, which is because it usually comes in the select board hearings, I believe. But we'll have discussion about which article is going on then, and that'll be published when the warrant is drafted.
And the bylaw should come in December. Before
Right.
final draft for approval.
That'd be great, yeah. But again, because you're a board that some boards can't bring things on their own, and so they have to come and get us to agree to do it. But you're a board that's actually able to bring your own article to town meeting, so, you know, in a worst case scenario, you don't have to come and talk to the select board, it's just nice to do so. Well, I see.
I was just thinking that because we have the personnel study task force who kind of kicked most of this process off, that maybe it would make sense to. I don't know, I don't know if that committee's still active or if
Yeah,
it's
someone from the
expired,
committee-
or if we should sort of have a conversation or just to
Yeah.
sort of bring them into the room, so.
Paul McComb, who was on that committee, had reached out and said, we'd love to come and talk to you about, you know, the points and to do that. So maybe in our December meeting, we could
Yeah.
invite them.
I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, right. We're thinking about that.
Yeah.
We just need to make certain that we're clear on what we want to talk about and what material it would be appropriate for them to have in advance.
Yeah.
But I think that's a great idea.
Well, if I may, if you, when you, maybe the output of this draft. Because that particular group really did look at the bylaw and had some opinions on it, maybe send them the draft and ask them to. See whether they have any further opinions on it, because they would be amongst the people that would be most likely to ask you a question at a town meeting hearing anyway, so I might as well. Find out what the question is and get ready with the answer.
Terrific. All right.
Liz, you're able to capture all the.
Yeah, and particularly that, so I have a note, it's gonna be messy, but a note that talks about the process, which we did need to get through today too. And so that's separate from these technical points on changing things. And then another separate note, let's invite the PSTF to the December personnel board, send them a draft of the bylaw. And have their comments on our next agenda, okay? Okay, all right, I'll take it on to reach out to them and let them know, and as soon as we gather all the comments from tonight. And I think we can send that around for approval, right, with the committee, right, for just approving with open
But it
meeting.
has to,
No, you can't,
yeah, I don't
So
think
we
we can.
can send it out, but we can't get comments back, and then we can ask
You can
Kimberly to
send
accumulate
comments to-
comments, is that all right?
That's
fine. And why don't we do that, and so that we can send it in advance.
Okay.
Right, to the PSTF. group. Okay, all right, so, yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
shall we move
back
on
to work.
to section D.
yeah,
So on this one, this is talking about again, back to class and comp plan. But looking at things such as cost of living or comparable municipal wage rates that may affect the existing plan. I think the discussion here is around the personnel board's role in reviewing and or approving any changes to these plans. Based on what the town manager investigates and comes back with.
maybe I intended this D a little differently than it was interpreted. I guess I think my intention was more to have a discussion. So either the town manager brings forward, here's some data that we have regarding cost of living, et cetera, that may impact employees, and, you know, to sort of get recommendations, review with the board, and then from there, maybe there would be changes. It's just that it says town manager, I'm sorry, the town manager or the designee should recommend. I thought it was more of a discussion, but we could recommend if the board feels that that's.
Well, it seems that we have to have somebody who's the active person or entity.
Right.
It's not the personnel board.
Mhm.
So I actually think it's okay the way this is written.
yeah, no.
I don't have any.
Yeah.
Except for the one, there was a note that you put in review and approve. Any
Yeah, I think that was
changes?
the comment, right? Are we approving, what is the extent of the personnel board's responsibility there?
I mean, if it ties back to the compensation classification plan, we do. I mean, if they're making changes, I guess that's why this was sort of separate in my mind, the way when I drafted it, because the bullet before is really about. Here's the classification compensation plan that the town manager and their designees created, we're gonna review. And this is more of a sort of in the interim, has something come up, has inflation increased, has COLAs, you know, like what's going on in the environment that could impact that. That's sort of where my brain came, you know, that's how I thought of those two bullets. When I wrote them.
Could I make just a general comment, because this is the personnel bylaw, and it's dealing with the responsibilities of the personnel board. I think that the bullets all are stronger and read better when they start out with what the personnel board's responsibility is. And then describe how they might interact with the person, with the town manager or their designee or somebody else in support of that. So, for example, in letter C, if the first sentence in there was the personnel board is responsible to review and approve the plan, the, class and compensation plan and presented to town meeting, then everything below that explains how that gets done, who's responsible for supporting that. Because this is a bylaw that defines the personnel board, not the town manager or their designee, that's someplace else. And so, I would then looking at letter D, I think what Kate was talking about was the role that the personnel board might have in reviewing and approving or recommending how COLA adjustments should be applied, some kind of across the board compensation element, if that's what we're talking about. And then what information they get in support of that. So I just, in terms of framing it so that it's easy to understand why a point is there, I think, that sort of topic sentence of description.
Start with us, yeah.
Yeah, start with the personnel board every time and be clear about what responsibility is being defined in that, and then it will be a lot easier to write the support words.
So that means for C, we take all that's in blue there above, or gray, I guess. And put it as a sub-bullet and start with the personnel board is responsible to review and approve the plan. And I guess identify what the plan is.
Yeah,
And then put all of that other information about our relationship with the town manager, et cetera, as one of the sub-bullets.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
game.
and it's useful to mention the town manager because this, of course, is the bylaw, and if some future town manager doesn't feel like they're supposed to support the personnel board, then it's in the bylaw that they are.
Yeah.
So that it's useful, but I still
Yeah.
think it makes to start with in the personnel bylaw, what the personnel board is responsible
Yeah.
for accomplishing.
Makes sense.
I like it.
If you look at the other bylaws that for other communities, I kind of modeled this after how that language is mapped out, and it's the personnel bylaw, the finance committee, the et cetera, shall or may or something like that, so I'd agree with that.
All right, so, if you could help me then with that, we're on D. C is pretty easy, right? You take the top part and put it as a sub-bullet. This D starts with the town manager, but I'm not quite sure where we are with the rest, so could you help me revise that one?
Well, again, the last sentence says the personnel board is responsible to review and approve any changes to these plans. And I think in these plans, what we're really talking about is cost of living or comparable adjustments to the classification of the compensation plan. So, and
I mean, the original, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Go ahead.
It's just that the original version said the personnel board shall review on regular intervals any factors such as cost of living or comparable municipal wage rates that may affect the classification compensation plans and make recommendation for changes to those plans to the town manager or their designee. I mean, isn't that what we're talking about here?
I think unless I misheard the town manager, so the way that reads, though. Shifts the
We're
onus to the
right.
personnel board.
Right, we're doing the work.
Research.
I see.
investigation.
Yeah.
Right, I think what we're trying to get is it's similar to like with the job descriptions and postings where the town manager or HR director work on those with
Mhm.
whomever is needed, hired, and they bring those to the personnel board for review and approval. I think we're asking for a similar, thinking about a similar relationship with that. So maybe what we could say is something like the personnel board is responsible to review and approve any changes to these plans based on the town manager's recommendation using cost of living or comparable municipal wage rates. Something like that, where it's leading.
That may impact.
That may.
Yeah, that may impact.
So just kind of shifting that last sentence to the front.
So there's one part in the middle I didn't catch. So the personnel board is responsible to review and approve any changes, and then I just went right to the cost of living or comparable municipal wage rates based on. And then the based on, I think, is where I lost you, Eric.
Based on the recommendation of the town manager.
Okay, so based on the recommendation of the town manager, okay. But
And then I guess
I
the
think
question is,
after
we
you
need to
had,
specify, how the town manager will make those assessments, which is the cost of living, comparable municipal wage rates, et cetera.
okay,
So actually,
Or
can I-
not.
I'm just wondering if we should step back a little. I'm wondering if this even needs to be in here, because that's basically what C is doing, right? The compensation and classification plan is to every year, they take into account cost of living.
no, we did
et
this
cetera, and so.
separate piece, remember, with other types of compensation. And that hadn't been touched, it was more of a policy though, right? The what was it for
The
the?
column pay, I think. Are you
Yeah,
thinking of the
Colin,
column pay?
yeah. And that was not part of the CNC at all, right? So maybe we do assemble it under C though.
Yeah,
Say
that's,
this
I'm
also
wondering
includes-
if it falls within it, it doesn't need its own separate.
Yeah. Well, are there other plans like that drastically need updates?
There are definitely, I don't know how many of them are wage related. But as you look down your list of PPPs and APPs. I would imagine you have shift policies or shift differentials, and I would imagine there are others.
All right, so maybe that's what we do is broaden out D. Not just on cost of, what is it, the COLA and so forth. But look. I don't know how to phrase it then. I'm back to typist now, guys. Rely on you.
Well, if those policies are part of your handbook, you've covered them under the handbook part. I'm not sure that you have to
Okay,
Yeah,
enumerate something like that separately. Indeed.
okay. All right, so then are we back to nothing, or are we back to one other sub bullet? In C,
I think we may be back to one simple.
sub bullet, okay,
yeah.
so I'm gonna ask you to say it slowly and I'll type.
Well, if you need to rewrite it, maybe you just strike the last sentence in letter B. And move the preceding sentence and make it a sub bullet.
Yeah,
Does that work? Yeah.
yeah,
So that becomes
Yeah,
part of
because
the overall review
the
and approval
overall
of the plan
plan, right.
classification.
yeah,
That's
agreed,
part of it.
yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, so put how, oh,
Like,
you like it, okay,
Yeah.
so put how D is now written. As sub bullet of C,
Yeah.
all of it,
And then delete the last sentence of
Mhm.
the existing letter D.
deleting the last sentence
The
that starts
sentence
with
that
the
reads the
personnel.
personnel board
Yeah.
is responsible to review and approve any changes to these plans based on these investigations, that would go away. And then we just move the rest of that section up.
Good idea. Okay, got it.
Can we go back to C though, were we changing the blue section, so we're gonna.
Yes, that's,
So, it's gonna
that
say the
also is
personnel
separate.
board, well, under C, sorry,
Correct.
oh,
This
are
goes
A
under
too. It
here.
should not be A, this should be like one.
Yeah, but it starts with the yellow sentence.
Okay, we're gonna
and-
start, the personnel
yeah.
board shall be, or is responsible to review and approve the plan presented and present to town meeting.
Yeah, and the plan has to be technically described as it is in an earlier sentence, but that's the only thing that would be taken out of the blue or gray part. But then that would be number 3, as sub-bullet.
Okay.
I'm gonna do this tonight because I'm not gonna remember this tomorrow, so. That would be
I
very.
don't think any of this will remember this tomorrow.
Right.
Alright, but I will do it, I promise, so, okay, so I will remember those things, and most of it I've written down anyway, okay. We are nearly there, guys, look at this, we don't have that, there's a page, not even a full page left, so.
So on the final page of the document, we have sections F, G, and H, all of which have some topics worthy of discussion. So letter F, the town manager or their designee is to provide recommendations to the personnel board for review and discussion regarding proposed articles for town meeting that may affect town employees covered by this bylaw.
So we should start as Mark has, and we agreed to recommend starting with the personnel board, right, so.
Yeah, and I think that if I may, implied in that is the notion that the personnel board is typically going to be the actual presenter and owner of any article
Yeah.
that recommends changes for employees covered by the bylaw. So the town manager's going to bring those things to town meetings through the personnel board. So capturing that general idea would I think fix that one.
Can you say that last part of it?
So because it's the personnel board that actually brings up articles related to employee matters. The employees covered by the bylaw to town meeting, the expectation is the town manager is gonna provide those recommendations. Discuss a gain sponsorship, if you will, from the personnel board in order to do that. So that's kind of what the personnel board is responsible for, bringing articles to town meeting that the town manager or their designee recommend for employees covered by the bylaw. So that's how the personnel board is responsible.
So the original statement, the personnel board shall provide recommendations to the town manager or their designee regarding proposed warrants for town meeting that may affect town employees covered by this bylaw. Is that what you said, or is that not the same thing you said? I'm just wondering.
I think you said that, did you say to the town manager?
To the town manager.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. So the
Okay,
personnel
you're
board
right.
makes recommendations to town meeting based on the town,
The town
their
manager.
dialogue with the town
With the town
manager.
manager.
Yeah,
Town meeting, okay, so based on. Say it again. What was it?
Personnel board.
Is responsible to bring articles to town meeting based on. Review and agreements,
yeah, so
In
articles,
consultation with the town manager or something
Yeah.
like that? Cause you're right, you're. Right.
yeah,
no, not yet.
oh, I'm sorry. So reading what it says in F right now.
Alright,
There's, so we're talking about articles for town meeting that may affect town employees covered by this bylaw. So the personnel board is responsible for articles for town meeting that may affect town employees covered by this bylaw.
stop, hold on.
So,
Articles for town meeting. That may affect employees covered by this bylaw, okay,
and so the town manager or their designee provides recommendations to the personnel board for review and discussion of the same. Of
one
those
more
articles.
time. The town manager,
So the town manager is responsible for discussing those things with the personnel board. So that the personnel board can bring them to town meeting.
And there doesn't have to be any mention of consultation or with the select board or.
No, I
with
mean,
the-
this is what's unique about you guys.
Right.
You're in the town charter. As the,
Right.
as the entity that has responsibility for personnel matters. And the select board really doesn't have the expertise that you bring. Or the policy knowledge. And so therefore. You know, you're enabled to act on the town's behalf with respect to employee matters. That's really why there's a bylaw that has to do with you. It's kind of like, if you think about it, you know, the Natural Resources Commission is responsible for the stewardship of natural resources. And the Zoning Board of Appeals is responsible for administration of the zoning bylaws. You're responsible for the administration of employees and personnel matters for people that are not collectively bargained. And that's a unique and discrete responsibility that the personnel board has.
All right, so F, the personnel board is responsible for articles for town meeting that may affect town employees covered by this bylaw. The town manager is responsible for discussion. I'm gonna lose my battery, for discussing these articles with the personnel board for review. And discussion regarding the same, so it's redundant there. What did I do? Town manager is responsible for review and discussion of these articles with the personnel board.
Well,
I do, but I have a funky, I'm not a Mac.
Oh.
I have it, I just. I know.
it's a man with body.
All right, I think I got it. And I have a chart that I think I have it. Okay, that's fine for F, I think. I'm gonna send it out if you guys sort of know that was not, I have a far better memory of what we discussed. I really agree with you.
It's not a plus.
It's not a-
No, there's one of them.
Oh, there's one. Okay, Joe, you're doing a great job pushing us upon. What's next?
Almost there.
Almost there. All right.
So are we clear on F?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. So on G. The town manager or designee shall review job descriptions for new and existing town positions covered by this bylaw. And provide recommendations to personnel board for changes to job description. To ensure that the town is able to recruit and retain qualified candidates and employees.
Town is misspelled in that last sentence.
Yeah, apparently I didn't like to spell town. My fingers were not working right. So I guess similar to the others, the person, could we say personnel board shall, was it?
Review and approve job description.
Yeah, as provided by the town manager. I mean, ultimately, the town manager and their designee are drafting and making updates to job descriptions that come to us that we then review and approve.
Yeah. So we're starting with the
So
personnel.
we
board.
just say that the personnel board. Shall review job descriptions. For new and existing town positions. Covered by this bylaw. And provide recommendations to the town manager. And I don't know if we need to say anything about the town manager.
Right.
Yeah, no, I agree. I
Seems
agree with that, yeah.
irrelevant.
Could you say it all again now?
Maybe. So the personnel board. Shall review the job descriptions for new and existing town positions covered by this bylaw. And provide recommendations to the town manager.
And provide your recommendations to
To
the town.
manager.
I got it. Okay. So one more.
So the last one, personnel board will support the town manager or designee in identifying human capital trends. such as benefit providers, recruitment strategies, HR database supports, and then provide recommendations to ensure the town's workforce is diverse, equitably treated, and inclusive of others. I'm not sure if there's a question on this in the highlighted area or not. This one actually seems to be worded appropriately.
Yeah,
Is-
I don't have any issue.
Is, the use of the word trends and programs.
Capital trends.
Trends and programs, I mean,
Oh, I see, so
Yeah.
training and that sort of thing, is that what you're
Yeah.
looking at?
well, I like, I think human capital trends is very appropriate,
Mhm.
and yet. We certainly have a role, I think, in providing input on programs that, we believe need to be more consistent, or if we're implementing. I don't know, then we'll have to really be very
What do you
clear.
mean by programs?
Like trainings and
Yeah,
support
those
for,
are- yeah.
Yeah, training
Things like
and,
that.
and, we've also got compensation,
Mhm.
type
Incentives.
incentive, yeah. So there are, and I wouldn't want to enumerate those.
Mhm.
But we need something general.
you said non-compensatory, what? What was you had a nice noun there, Bill.
I was using the word programs, but
No, well,
What?
so what I was doing is, we have EG after human capital trends, and then I put in and programs, and then paren, EG, training, and other non-compensatory, compensatory, I can't say that word.
Compensatory.
Oh, that's compensatory, I spelled it correctly,
Yeah.
just couldn't, all right, compensatory. What? Benefits, is that what you said? You had a nice word there, though. So it's.
Just thinking.
Perhaps and I don't know if this is what you're trying to get at, Bill, or not, but like the trend stuff is more external. So kind of like maybe what other towns are doing, or other areas or companies or whatever that maybe the town should think about. But then there's also internal practices that happen, whether it's training or this other HR
recognition,
practices, recognition programs, things like that. So it's like, maybe it's in identifying human capital trends and town HR practices or programs. Would that clarify what you're?
that's in essence what I'm trying to encourage us to think about, whether that's worthy of a special.
I don't think it's necessary to put in the EG benefits, recruitment, etc. I think that might be too specific. Or if we do, it could be including, but not limited to, and then it gives you movement if you want to change that.
That's what EG means, but I'm happy to put including but not limited to benefit providers, recruitment strategies, HR database supports, and external comparative comparisons, or I wasn't quite clear how those EG listed things were external. So should I put comparative at the beginning of that list, including but not limited to comparing benefit providers, recruitment strategies, so.
I'm kind of with Kate, I don't know that there's a benefit of listing out stuff.
Okay,
I mean, human capital trends is a really broad bucket, so.
Maybe these are the things we're concerned about today, but years from now, there'll
Yeah.
be something completely different
Mm.
that we can't even contemplate now because it hasn't happened yet.
so just take it out, identifying human capital trends and
Internal HR programs and practices.
Okay, well, I think that's a good
Mhm.
compromise for sure.
When we think about remote work and that trend, we would have never written about that.
yeah.
Yep.
What was it, we work that went under?
Yeah, we're coming for bankruptcy
I think the pandemic.
last, just a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
So
So
that,
that was the hot thing, right?
Right.
Well, there's also, I mean, I was listening to NPR. That, there are school districts in this country that are going to 4 days.
Yeah. I heard that on the way over here.
And, you know, would that possibly apply to municipalities, and especially in situations where you don't have enough resources?
Yeah.
People for 5 days, I mean, there are a variety of these types of initiatives that might come up as a regular practice, but we don't have to worry about that. Yeah.
yeah.
How about that? Wayland did a pilot program for a 4-day work week in August.
Oh.
Time of August. So it's a trend. There are some municipalities in Massachusetts who've actually permanently moved to a 4-day work. Not many, a couple. But it's out there.
That report was interesting because they pointed out that once all the districts in an area do that, then all you get is 20% less education for the same amount of money. And some of these municipalities apparently in exchange for what would have been $60 a year on their taxes, ended up with $1,000 a year of daycare costs for the extra day that they have to look after their kids who are no longer in school on every Friday or something, so.
Right.
It's a blessing. I did have one addition that when I reviewed it. A letter I don't, have you guys finished with H?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay, so, this is again, with a little bit of going to the select board, but. I had, and I've slightly changed the wording to make it more, but the personnel board will support the select board by providing input to the annual town manager evaluation. On the effectiveness of personnel management and recruiting by the town manager and their designee. So that would be my request for your consideration.
The personnel board will support the select board by providing annual evaluation of the town manager.
Input into the annual town manager evaluation.
And input into, okay.
I don't have any problem with that, but it does bring to my mind, where we have a role. With the evaluation, but we have no role with the selection. And should we? So, you know, it's okay for us to be involved with, at the end, we've got the person that has, but
Good point.
isn't there a converse of? I don't know the answer, it's,
Yeah.
How
I
are
think that
town managers selected? Who does that?
So
Select board?
typically what happens is, executive search firm is engaged by the select board and a town manager search team is put together, which usually involves some members of the select board along with some work by town staff. But I think that actually inserting this is the beginning to get to where the bill is really going, which is if you have a role in the evaluation, that evaluation obviously has to do with the retention and the contract negotiation and becomes a basis for reminding future select boards that they should be considering the personnel management aspects of their selected candidate.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah,
that's exactly
Right.
my point.
it's a key thing. Okay. So if you willing to consider that, I think it would be a good addition.
Just that or add in review?
Well, can I guess I wanted to understand a little bit more about what you mean by support. As the select board, I guess I could just, I'm just sort of pulling back and looking at all the other boards and committees that we have.
Yeah.
And if personnel board is the only one that's providing that type of support, when the town manager works with all of those boards and committees, are we opening a door so that now all of the other boards will want the same to provide this type of support? That's my biggest concern.
Yeah, that's a fair point. So when So it's support by providing input into the evaluation specifically on personnel management and recruiting.
Mhm.
And those are two areas that virtually never come before the select board at all. We occasionally do things like appoint the town accountant or something like that, but you know, that's very administrative and has nothing to do with actually understanding personnel management. I think some of these other areas of, you know, is the town manager effectively administering our sustainability goals and things like that, those are already enshrined in the goals that we typically talk to the town manager about every year. And this, you know, managing the workforce is one that
Yeah,
is always there, is always extremely important, and never makes the list
yeah,
of top 5 goals in any given year, because those are always sort of driven by other, you know, priorities. And so that's why I think that as a community, we would be well served by sort of enshrining the fact that there will be an element of how we evaluate our chief executive that regards how they're looking after our workforce.
yeah, I agree.
The problem I have with that, or what I think we have to think of, is that anecdotal information and data is not helpful
Mhm.
in meeting that objective. So what then is our basis for acquiring
Well,
a
thanks to
and
Kimberly, we have data, right? We'll have data and the overarching decision on, you know. I was sent some information that we have far higher vacancies than other towns. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's certainly something for us to look at. And we can, because Kimberly's put together the data, so we do it based on data, I think that's a very good point. But I think we're almost ready to do that,
but I think we've got to consider
yeah.
what the landscape, how, you know, are we taking a narrower focus on the landscape, and maybe this personnel management review should cover a broader. I mean, we're not looking for a popularity contest here, but we're looking for a way in which we can provide meaningful, objective data to respond to the select board's need. And I'm just concerned that right now, I don't see a clear pathway.
Do you know what's missing? Objectives for the year. If we knew what the personnel, the HR objectives were for the town manager, then we could evaluate versus those objectives, but we don't have those.
But isn't that what the select board's supposed to do? They're supposed to
Oh.
map out goals for the year, and we're not involved in that goal setting process, so how can we then provide insight to something we don't have insight
Yeah,
into?
as a matter of fact, this is open-ended enough to suggest that the input into the town manager evaluation could be on both ends. So the goal setting as well as the evaluation of those goals. And earlier in the meeting, I think you were actually pointing out one of the best things to do is measure ourselves against ourselves. Is the turnover rate going up, or is the turnover rate going down? Is the vacancy rate going up? Is the vacancy rate going down? How are we doing at retention? What are the reasons for separations? Are they good separations, or are they less than ideal separations? Those are the kinds of things which longitudinally you'll be in a position to measure if that data is forthcoming, and if the data is not forthcoming, then that's its own issue.
I agree with that, but what I'm trying to point out is that, and let me pick benefits. Benefits are a huge expense, and they have a very emotional component to employees. And are we excluded from, or you know, how does that particular piece of the person's employment and how they feel about the town, how do we try to provide feedback to the select board in a meaningful way?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I know that at the moment, we just at the select board a couple of meetings back, authorized the town manager to solicit quotations from alternative service provider, health plan service providers to take a look at the GIC, take a look at Maya, as well as Minuteman Neshoba Health Group, which has been and so the town manager is gonna go off and do that. And probably at some point in the town manager's report, all we'll ever get back from that is whether a decision has been made or not made. You guys are probably in a much better position to actually assist in that or help evaluate those quotes than we would ever be in that. And to the point, it is emotional. I think it, beyond being emotional and important to employees, there's also an opportunity to represent back to the community, what kind of employer do we want to be? For example, take the living wage concept that's out there. We could make a statement that we want to be a community where we always pay a living wage. And define what that is, and that could be a principle as a community that we decide to endorse. But that's the kind of initiative that I think could come out of this board working with the town manager to say, and we'll go help you with the finance committee when they say, yeah, a living wage, yeah, but that's gonna cost X. Of course it's gonna cost X, but what does it mean to us from an employee satisfaction perspective and those kinds of things? Those are programs which have been, can I say, completely lacking. We just don't have those types of initiatives.
So I tried to shape this a little bit more. So the personnel board will support the select board by providing input into the annual evaluation on personnel management and recruiting of the town managers. These annual evaluation parameters will be specified by the select board.
Yeah.
And they could be projects.
Yeah, okay.
What do you think?
I'm still struggling with this because I feel like as a volunteer board, we see a tiny sliver of what the town manager actually does when it comes to recruitment and retention. We don't know what's going on the ground, like there could be someone who comes in and says, I got this offer from a job, the town down the road. I don't want to leave here, but they're gonna pay me, 5-10% more. And we have no insight into that. So how do we have enough information to provide a valuable?
That would be stuff that comes out with the HR director reports to the committee.
But some of that stuff can't really be shared, I mean,
You've got the you have quantitative data, but I think, I don't speak, but I think what part of Kate is suggesting, there's a qualitative piece to this.
But we're not the only, I mean. So I used to get and give and provide information for 360 reviews annually for people. And I didn't ever assume that my word was the only word that was being spoken. People were 8 to 12, people were reviewing each person, right, in any role in my corporate world. And we would only be providing this to the select board, and they would make the decision. It would be one piece, because as you said, the green initiative and so on, they have other ways of evaluating. We wouldn't certainly be trying to evaluate 100% of what a town manager would do. I'm not so fussed by it.
I'm concerned about the quality, I guess, of the data and the quality of the information that would be shared with the select board. In your example, in the 360, you have multiple people providing.
Yeah.
We don't have multiple people. So other than the
But
quantitative.
we're not multiple people, we'd be only one data point for them to make the decision. We'd only be providing an evaluation, we wouldn't be doing the final word. We're not the final word, we're one data point for the select board. And I think what you're really saying is that without Kimberly here, are we sure we're gonna get good data? And I think that's a question, but I do think that, I
perhaps having this clause in this document would create a different urgency around some of the data from the town manager. If Kimberly were to walk out of here and we no longer have access to that information, if there's some, I don't disagree with what you guys are saying. We don't know anything really on a day-to-day basis the town manager is doing, other than what we hear from the town during these meetings. But if the town manager in the future knows that we will have at least some input into that rating or selection process, if I were the town manager, I would show up here as well as they could with information, data, problem solving, and kind of having those conversations around this table to make the town as good as we can. I would also
Yeah.
make sure we have a really good director of HR and HR team.
Yeah.
You know, and
I
fill
agree.
those roles and make sure that that team looks good.
The one thing that we haven't talked about, what is, I think is appropriate in terms of data is, you know, we possibly would want to do a survey.
Yeah.
Every year. Because that would obviously serve as some good data or different data or hard data that would help perhaps. But I don't know if that's a feasible.
Well, So what I put in here is
Sure.
these annual evaluation parameters would be set by the select board, so they may say to us. Work on this one thing,
Okay,
and if you have support, you know, and you wanna report back, we want you to report back. On what it was like working with the town manager on that one thing, was it successful? So we're not going crazy here, guys, I don't think, this is one data point. On personnel issues, that would be fed into the select board, it's not our decision, which it
Yeah,
wouldn't
I
be saying
understand.
we know all about HR either, it would be parameters set by them.
I'm gonna be honest, I'm not a big fan of this concept. I think like I said, I think it does open doors. Does then FinCom come, you know, decide that they're gonna change their bylaw and then they're gonna have input and then all of the other boards and committees, you know, and then it's, when you're talking about 360, we're talking about every board and committee in the town and how did, I know, but then how does the select boards, how does the select, I mean, I'm not a select board member clearly, but how do they, you know, decipher all of that data and that information when ultimately, you know, it comes down to the select board to make that evaluation, not us.
So
I'm
nine.
not a town, so I'm not as. Knowledgeable about how towns are structured as everyone else in this room, but. If the select board is responsible for the performance assessment of the town manager. The select board isn't in these personnel meetings. I mean, Marcus, you know. We're the ones that interface the most, so if I were the select board. I would be looking for input, frankly, from all of the committees on how a town manager does it. That wouldn't be abnormal to me. So even if it did expand beyond personnel board to the finance committee and other committees. Again, the expert in this space, but a well-run town. With a really good town manager, to me, all of the committees that the manager is working with. To some degree should provide feedback. I mean, that's not. An abnormal thing to do. If I were on the select board, I would be asking committees, whether it's formally or not, for feedback. And then you kind of take all of those data points together and come out with an assessment. It doesn't mean like. And I don't think we're trying to penalize anybody, right? You're just trying to make the town as good as it can be and get those different perspectives.
well, we're gonna have to either table
We have to get a final draft guide.
or we're going to have to, you
Should
know,
we
vote, or we have to vote.
All right, I guess we have to
The,
get Pamela then, because I think it's 2 versus 2 right now,
Yeah,
but.
so I think it's gonna require a full,
Yeah,
And we probably need exact language to have the
Yeah.
vote up
Yeah.
to, so perhaps in our next meeting, that could be
Yeah, we can review it.
something to.
All right, so, but if we're.
I have
I
the
think
same
we have to
question
send it to
around
the select board too, because
yeah,
select
it
board
is
should.
for your consideration, and I think there's some value in doing that, I think that, I was persuaded that this might be a good idea. A couple of years back when the select board specifically in their town manager evaluation. Called out the fact that they had no basis for evaluating the town manager's. Personnel management. Elements, and I was sort of like. How could that possibly be? You have a personnel board. There's activity going on in that space all the time, and yet you don't have any basis for evaluating it, it means you didn't ask the question. And so it seemed to me that there might be value in that. The town the select board. Is extremely deferential to the finance committee. When doing things like setting the guideline, which is really the overall spending of the town, so it's a very broad policy based position. And it's done outside of the select board by that committee doing their work because they are they are really tasked with becoming the experts on that behalf. And so to me, there's an analogy here that this personnel board is tasked with being the best informed. Nobody's perfectly informed. We don't know everything that we could, ever want to know, but your information is certainly better than the select board's information in this space.
Right,
Because
so I'll
of your
draft-
expertise and your involvement.
And send that piece, and then that piece in particular, all of us should comment on and send those comments, Kimberly, to your desk, okay, because you can collate them and we can't.
Okay.
Okay, and then Mark, you'll handle it through the select board.
Yeah, I don't know your next meeting schedule, but. I think that when you have a draft that you feel is close enough, doesn't have to be perfect. And I think that it makes more sense at this stage of the game to pick the date. December 4th or December 18th is the last scheduled select board meeting before it's actually after draft warrant articles review, so. If you think there's any chance that you would have a meeting before December 4th that could approve a draft, then. If not, then,
We're set for the
Next is the
13th,
13th.
right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Your
so-
next regularly scheduled meeting would be.
okay, so
But this
maybe,
is something I think we can do with Kimberly's support. To pull it all together, send the comments, even a vote, can we do a vote that way or not?
Yes,
we can, all right. All right,
Um,
so maybe we'll have to set a 30-minute Zoom meeting, I just know my
It has
schedule.
to be, would have to be, open meeting law would have to be.
Yeah.
considered.
So you can do that if you announce it.
Yeah.
48 hours in advance or whatever, and you can do it, I think you can do it all soon,
sure,
yeah.
Okay, all right, so let me get this out as quickly as I can, and then, maybe folks could look at schedule. I think keeping it on the same day of the week is probably helpful for not only us, but for others, so maybe Wednesday, but we'd be looking at. It's not gonna be the week of Thanksgiving, right, so it'd be the 15th or the 29th of November, in order to get it done by the 4th for the select board meeting. I'm good on the 29th. Does that one? This is a lot of back and forth, right? Mark has to look with the select board as well.
I'm okay on the 29th.
Yeah,
I would have to be virtual, but I can.
I would prefer to be virtual.
Okay,
so the 29th of November, you can do that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I could do that.
Okay.
Yeah, the only issue I can see with that is that will actually miss the deadline for putting together papers for the December 4th meeting. So, which doesn't mean we couldn't push it to the 18th and then there'd be plenty of time for that.
so you're saying we should go with the 13th?
Well, if you could
What do
do
you
it
guys
next week, then that
Is that
leaves
next
plenty of time for that.
Are you guys available on the 15th?
I am.
I have to go back to.
clarification question, would we vote on the entire bylaw draft or one section of it?
I'd like to vote on the whole thing, because that's how we can get it on their agenda.
Yeah.
Right?
You can still have it labeled draft. I think
Okay.
it's more important that the gist of it and the broad points are there. If you change it after the fact, again, you're unable to take something to the warrant. It doesn't have to be the final. You could say, here's our draft bylaw. And it gets into our packet, that will get you some comments from people other than me on the select board, only one voice on that, and that would be useful, and then you still have some time before the 15th, before the January 4th to actually finalize it, and if something comes out or changes, then you just own that, that's all.
Yeah, and it would be this, maybe the select board we presented there and they say, no, we want this, or.
Yeah.
We like this word better. All right, 15th
Yes,
Zoom,
works for me.
so that means by this Friday, we have to have everything. Well, we have to have an agenda to post, right?
Right, your agenda can be as
Only
simple as,
this,
yeah,
yeah,
bylaw,
okay.
call to order bylaw. Adjournment.
Adjourn.
Yeah.
The one piece that I guess I'm just contemplating or wondering about is. We have had no real opportunity to have citizen input.
Well, we have, but nobody's come. That's not our fault, I'm gonna say in my late night grouchiness. But
Well,
what
I think-
do you think?
I think, Mark, do you have a?
Well, again, one of the advantages of coming to our December 4th meeting is that it will be in a packet which is read more broadly
Yeah,
by the community, and you may get some input, whether you like it or not.
But I think we've been criticized
Yes,
for not taking the initiative to have our own. Sort of, we're identified that there's a requirement or it's a good PR. And so we're not doing it.
Could we reach out to the personal study task force for the 15th? I mean, we had talked about that earlier
oh, okay,
as an option.
Should we do that?
They could come for the discussion.
that,
Anyway,
That might
I only
They can
pointing
see
out
them.
history.
right, but I would also point out that you guys have had this on your agenda and have been discussing it at basically every meeting this fall. And, you know,
Sure.
it's an unfortunate fact that until stuff actually gets to the warrant, gets to the town meeting hearings, it doesn't get read by anybody, you know, or a lot of people, but
it's hard.
you certainly cannot, the criticism in the past was that finalized things appeared almost beyond their deadline, and then they were on the warrant, and with no evidence of prior discussion. That's certainly not the case. Your minutes are good and they've been thorough, so,
They're up to date.
yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna put in the notes to invite the PSCF to 11:15 meeting. And I will take that job on, and CC you, Bill, okay, so we're in sync on that. And then I promised tonight, it might be very early in the morning tomorrow, but I will get you the revisions of the bylaw,
Okay,
okay, as for this discussion.
and when you send that to me, exactly what am I to do? Because I've made a note that I can post your meeting for the 15th.
Yeah.
That's simple. But what am I to circulate with you all, did you say?
I think that's right? I'm not supposed to circulate, or I can
No.
circulate, but I can't accept comments.
You all can't comment to one another,
Right,
I think is the open.
Right, you can make changes here that we discussed in open meetings, send it to us. If we have comments or changes, we have to send it to the committee.
all right, so I'll
That
CC
is
you on
correct.
that.
So I'm number positive.
You're
Yeah.
the
I'm-
positive
I'm-
end, but I'm the responsible one to send it out. All right, and then, you know, from your own notes too, and Kate, you took a lot of notes, so if you take a picture and send those to me, I'll try to.
You won't be able to
scribble.
read them, but.
I know, I was looking here, and it was hopeful for a minute, but then I looked more closely.
Yeah.
Forget it.
Now, once I accept all these comments, any comments that come,
I can come to your office and I can revise with my
Yeah.
computer, I mean,
Okay.
so I'll endeavor to do that, I have time on Monday morning. And otherwise I don't, so it's, so that means everybody has to get their comments to Kimberly by Sunday night.
Okay.
All right, and then I'm allowed to see them, right, if I go to her
Yeah, of
office.
course.
You could distribute back out all of the comments to the board. It's just at that point, it has to stop until the meeting.
Okay.
So
they can't pivot.
they can't
Yeah,
correct.
start going back and forth, but you can say, here's all the comments that I received by this date. So that you can then be prepared when meeting happens to, you know, or publish in the meeting packet, this is the comments from everybody.
Okay,
And, but you just can't, Keith Bergman always puts this on his thing, no discussions in cyberspace,
Yeah.
but.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, good.
All right, I think we are not going toward the charge tonight.
No,
Again.
I think we've,
But I do think that this is first, right? We
Yeah.
discussed this
Yeah.
on getting ready for this meeting as co-chairs. In appropriate compliance with our open meeting laws, but just to make sure that, you know, we don't want to move too quickly with that charge. Understanding the handbook is right behind it, the bylaw first. And thanks to Kate, we're just about there,
Okay.
so. Okay, one last push, guys, we can do this.
all right.
Thank you.
Any, I don't think we have any citizen. Out, didn't we have like 600 or 700?
Who was on a Boston Foundation call this morning? 850 people on that call.
Wow.
It was on housing. Redlining.
That makes sense,
Yeah.
everyone says in the comment, come with me to the hearing room and hear about Warren's mom.
Ah, that's where, yeah.
So what I'm gonna do now is entertain a motion to adjourn.
I take the first
So-
motion to adjourn.
Second,
All right, all in favor?
Yes.
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 Yeah.
Yes.
All right.